I'm going to show you a really wild game between Magnus Carlsen and Alexander Grischuk from day 2 of the Crypto Cup. Don't forget to like, comment, share and subscribe, and do consider supporting us via PayPal or Patreon, links there. Okay, here we go. Carlsen had a pretty mediocre first day, 50%, and definitely wasn't satisfied with his play. He drew the first 2 games on day 2. Had very good chances to beat Anish Giri, but didn't put it away. Alexander Grischuk, well, he's having a pretty rotten time in the tournament. So Carlsen, well, he was looking to kickstart his tournament with a win against Grischuk, who was suffering. So he played pawn to b3 now. If this move works out, then everyone goes, oh, very clever. If it doesn't succeed, then everyone goes, oh, well, just pushing it a bit too hard. But against Grischuk, well, maybe a clever choice, because Grischuk, in unusual positions, likes to invest time. He's not the most practical player, and in rapid play, that's dangerous. And right from the word go, Grischuk started investing time. Now, in this position, Carlsen played knight f3. Fischer used to like to play pawn to e3. He won a couple of beautiful games against Tukmarkov, against Anderson. You'll find those videos, find those games in, well, I've recorded them on the channel. You find links down there. And those games both went into a kind of reverse Sicilian, which I think is a good outcome for White in this situation. But Carlsen played a far more provocative move, knight to f3. And it looks like they're about to go into, well, another famous game, Larsen against Spassky from the Soviet Union against the rest of the world match, Belgrade 1970. There, Larsen took on c6 and he lost in 17 moves. Spassky won a brilliant game. You'll also find that video on the channel. Again, you'll find the link down there somewhere, or maybe even up there on the I button. Don't know. But here, instead of taking on c6, which does give black very easy development, here Carlsen played an outrageous move. Knight to f5. I mean, it looks incredible that White has played 1, 2, 3 moves with the knight already. He's neglecting his development. The king is a long way from reaching safety. If White were developed, then you'd think, yeah, this looks kind of fun. Hitting g7 with the bishop on b2. But White is so far behind in development now. It's not actually a new move. It's been seen several times before, played by creative players such as Richard Rapport, Vladislav Artemiev, and they've done okay with it. Here, most players have castled. But Grischuk decided to be creative. Let me just point out a few little details here, actually. The point is this, that basically this knight is going to come back here. Maybe this knight will be knocked out, and then knight c3, and you can see that that e-pawn actually gets surrounded. That's one of the points of this idea, actually. It's not necessarily to attack black's king. Anyway, it's very complicated. Instead of castle's kingside, Grischuk played a new move, pawn to d5. So typical of him. He wants to find the best move in the position, and he's prepared to invest time to do that. He can't help himself. But in rapid play, is that the most practical way to play? Well, let's find out. d5. Hitting the knight. Knight takes pawn check, king f8, and now you can see that that knight on g7 is actually trapped. This is Grischuk's idea. So how does it come back? Well, can't at the moment, but Carlsen takes on d5 with a threat to take the knight. And Grischuk had prepared this move, bishop d4. very interesting. But, you know, this already involves a lot of calculation. And here's the idea. If bishop takes, knight takes, e3. Now this kind of looks okay for white because that knight is, well, sort of trapped. I mean, if it comes back to f5, then white can simply exchange. So, yeah, I mean, this looks simply better for white, having taken that pawn. But in this position, instead of knight f5, black plays this and then takes on d5. And now this looks better for black. So that's Grischuk's idea. So Carlsen played knight c3. Again, a really tricky position. The knight is attacked on c6. So what does black do about that? Well, here Grischuk played knight e7. The best move is actually knight b4, and this is ludicrously complicated. And then knight h5, and when that's taken, e3 hits the knight, hits the bishop. But even here, I mean, the complications go on. Now, although material is sort of roughly even, you can see that there are threats here, threats here. I mean, this is absolutely mad position. There's a pin there. I mean, both sides have to tread really carefully in this position. But I have to say that white's king is in some danger there. Anyway, that's a big digression again. Instead of knight b4, knight e7 played by Grischuk. e3 hits the bishop. So if the bishop retreats, then the knight will be able to come here. So bishop takes knight. And now I can imagine, maybe in his calculation, Grischuk had only considered the normal bishop takes to keep the diagonal open, and then king takes, and well, white has some compensation here, but it's not bad for black. You know, this pawn is going to drop. But instead of taking the bishop with the bishop, Carlsen played d takes c3, giving up the knight on g7, and then c4. Now, this is a very different situation. This incredible dark squared bishop is still on the board, lasering across to the king. But the difference between this position and the last variation is that that pawn is now protected. And those pawns, that pawn chain, gives white a shield. And here it's much easier for white to build an attack against the king. Knight g6 played. g4. So threat to play here. And then h4. So Carlsen going for it. I mean, it's kind of amusing that he's just, at the moment, he's not even bothering moving the rest of his pieces. Of course, this isn't, well, it's a kind of, it's almost a threat. You've got to watch out for the pin. There's a lot going on here. c5. In fact, I mean, you could play this, but actually black is rather back in the game after this. I think that's probably selling white's position short, to be honest. White can do better than that. There's simply no need to cash in, basically. So bishop e2 played by Carlsen, very calm. King g8, stepping out of this pin, at least with the king. Queen c2, yeah, now Carlsen just decides to develop. Rook h7, stepping out of the pin, but not a beautiful position. And castles queenside. So, I mean, you can see that white's position is really harmonious here. And well, Carlsen is just, he's just not rushing it. He doesn't need to, because his advantages are permanent. That bishop has no opponent. These pieces simply can't get into the game. Grischuk decided to take on g4. Well, a condemned man eats a hearty breakfast. That even opens up the g-file. And queen takes e4. But I should say there really isn't much better for black in this position. f5 defends the knight at least. And there we go. Grischuk is still going on a mad spree with the knight. It's hardly surprising that this is winning for white now. Check. King f7. Rook f1. Okay, the rook's lining up absolutely beautifully. Queen h4 hangs on here. Now there are many winning moves. Carlsen was not actually very precise here, but by this stage Grischuk was down to his final seconds, and well, in such cases almost any sensible move is going to win this position. This is a very pragmatic move, threatening to take the knight. I mean, of course that's pinned. That's horrible. And if the knight comes here, well, one could simply pin. Queen h2 is a very attractive move as well. So many good moves in this position. Carlsen played bishop b5. It's definitely not the most precise. And here Grischuk missed a chance with queen e7. Like I said, it should still be lost. And I mean, such moves are really hard to find. This would be the best continuation. And now knight d7. And you can see once that bishop goes here, then, well, black is kind of in the game here. It's not yet over. White should win, but it's not so clear. But short of time, well, Grischuk played queen e4. And now everything is back on track again. Rook takes knight threatened. Knight h3 and rook g4 wins the queen. Now, this victory really kick-started Carlsen's tournament, because after this he outplayed Dubov. So things going better for Carlsen on day 2. But yeah, what a clever choice. b3 against Grischuk. The whole thing worked like a charm. And this is a very interesting continuation. Knight f5. That's definitely worth investigating if you want to rehabilitate 1b3 in this whole variation. Thanks for watching. Quick update. I actually recorded that analysis before the final game of the day, and Carlsen lost against Aronian. So he is still struggling with his form. So he finished the day on 5.5 out of 10, and actually, according to the tie breaks, he is still out of the top 8. So he's got a really tricky final day. Looking at the top, we've got Radjabov, Karawan and Nakamura all on 6.5. They lead. But it's going to be hard work for Magnus. Will he actually make it through to the knockout stage? That will be incredible if he doesn't make it.